welcome to our Teach in Australia webinar. We're very pleased that you're here with us this evening. So we'll just start with some introductions. My name is Annika. I am one of the Global Opportunities Consultants based in the UK, and I am in Bristol. So some of you may have spoken to me. I may speak to you, some of you in the future as well, but I am one of three UK-based consultants that supports educators making the journey. I'm originally from Canada, and I trained as a special needs teaching assistant when I lived there. I have experience working across education in Canada, Australia, and the UK. I lived and worked in Melbourne for a year. I worked there with ANZ UK. And then I made the journey to the UK almost 4 years ago. I worked as a TA here as well before I made the transition internal with ANZ UK about 2 years ago. So that's kind of a little bit of my journey, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Corey, and if Annika and I look alike, that is because we are sisters. I am based in our Newport office here in the lovely Wales, so very close, and I might be speaking to any of you educators as well. We also do have our colleague Kiara in London, so we're all spread out, and we also have our team leader in Denmark. I myself am obviously also from Canada. I made the move over to the UK about 2.5 years ago now, and I have a bit of experience as a teaching assistant here in the UK, both in England and in Wales, and I was an educator through ANZ UK before I joined my sister here on the global team, and I've been supporting educators making the move for the last 7 months now.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. And if you do notice a little picture in the corner, that is Corey and our colleague Kiara. So that is our little team. And we love it. It's a very fun little team that we've got. So this is a little bit about us and why we think you should work with us and what it's like being part of our team. So we were started I think it was about 17, 18 years ago now, by our CEO, Daniel Mundy. Him and another teacher in the UK started sending educators back and forth. And they, were kind of supporting educators, just really kind of low-key, making the journey to each country. And then it slowly grew and grew. We moved from working in, a garage to offices, and now we have quite the spread of offices throughout the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and America. And we have our own little group going on in America as well. So it's quite an impactful story when you get to hear the whole thing, just of how much they've grown and what can happen from just a little seed of an idea and how that grows. So when you work with ANZ UK as an agency, we can offer you a lot of variety with work, and we're going to go into the details of kind of how we provide this specifically in Australia and what opportunities they are a little bit later on. But we have lots of opportunities from supply work, contract work, permanent opportunities for early childhood educators, TAs, teachers, you name it, we've got support. So we can help you out wherever you are in your journey, and help you find something that's going to be a good fit for you. We offer you a lot of flexibility. So we have a lot of educators who like to make the journey to Australia to be able to travel as well as teach. We can do that for you. If you're looking for something more, full-time, we can absolutely do that too. But if you want some flexibility, we can absolutely help you out. It's a great way to be able to supplement your travels while you're checking out beautiful Australia and New Zealand and Asia and everything. So it's a nice way to be able to enjoy kind of both sides of that coin. Our consultants have a lot of industry knowledge. A lot of us have been working with the company in some kind of capacity for quite a few years. So we have a lot of kind of know our schools kind of in and out as well. And we are able to kind of support you with finding opportunities that are going to fit best for you. We offer fair pay and regular income. So all of our educators are paid to scale, and we will go over this a little bit more detail later on. And you can expect regular income. So when you do work directly through us, you can expect be paid weekly in arrears, so that definitely helps supplement travel as well. We offer, again, a lot of flexibility between, types of work. So if you wanted to work really casually to start with and then move into something more full-time, maybe move into a contract, we can do that. Vice versa, if you want to go straight into working full-time, then maybe take some time off, we can do that too. Again, very, very flexible. We offer a lot of relationship building opportunities, whether that's in the form of events or info sessions. Facebook groups, so you can meet other traveling educators and other educators who are like-minded to you and kind of want the same experience with traveling. We support you during your transition on multiple sides. So of course, we're based here in the UK to help you kind of, pre-departure, work out what's going to be the best way for you to get to Australia. And then we do also have the teams in Australia to help you with making the journey and your arrival and everything. So it's very kind of 360 support in that sense. And again, lots of social events. So it's a really great way to build connections. I still am close friends with quite a lot of educators I also met in Australia, and I just couldn't imagine life without them. So you never know who you're going to meet and what connections you're going to build.
So obviously a good question to ask is why teach in Australia? Of all the places you could go abroad, why Australia? Honestly, there's a variety of reasons, and everybody's got their own personal goals that they're trying to achieve and kind of ambitions with this move as well. Number one thing is going to be personal growth. Obviously, going abroad, you're going to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. You're getting a new insight on the world. You get to experience other cultures. There's tons of other traveling educators that are going to be in Australia from all over the world as well. So it's a really great way to broaden your horizons, but personally, really. You obviously get to experience living in another country for a longer period of time. You don't just have to stay there for a few months. You can be there for a few years. So it's a really great way to really immerse yourself into the country there. Career development through ourselves as an educator there. You are obviously going to be trying out a few different settings. You get to get a bit more variety under your belt. It's a lot of great experience to bring back with you when you do return home. You're building up your references, you're building up, your CV there. And you really get to develop yourself and your different skills that way, which is really, really fantastic. And then, of course, there is life experience. It goes along with both. You really get to make friends from all over the world. You get to travel so much of Australia. It is a huge country, so there's plenty to see. You're much, much closer to Asia, so it's quite easy traveling from there. And you get to be part of, an expat community while you're abroad. So you get to connect with other people when you do come back home. And it's really great to have friends from all over the world. You really get a very unique experience. No two stories are the same when moving abroad.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Corey.
And we'll also just go over the size of Australia. So a lot of people don't quite realize the scale. Europe fits within Australia quite easily here. So it's good to keep in mind where you're going to be based. A lot of people don't realize that Perth is a 5-hour flight from Melbourne. It's quite a ways away. Sydney to Melbourne is about an hour's 2-hour flight. So there's plenty to see. You're going to get a lot of miles behind you there. And you got plenty to explore.
Absolutely. It's honestly, it's hard to see everything in just a year as well. I only had a year living there myself, and I could definitely have spent quite a few years in Australia. So you'll never get bored. There's lots to do. So a bit of information about actually making the transition to Australia. So the two biggest things that you need to be able to get into the country and to be able to teach there are your right to work and your qualifications, so visa and qualifications. And just as I'm thinking as well, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat box and we'll try and address them throughout the webinar or at the very end. So if you've got any questions about the information that pops up, please let us know. So in terms of getting to Australia, most of our educators are going to start on the 417 working holiday visa. So that's if you're from Ireland and the UK, that's anybody 35 and under. Some European countries are also 35 and under, and some are 31 and under. So it depends on what country you come from, but usually it's going to be the 417 working holiday visa. We're going to go into those details of that visa a little bit later on as well. We do also see quite a few educators who travel on a skilled worker visa. So it's usually subclass 189 or 190. Those offer you a longer stay in Australia. They do lead to permanent residency. If you are traveling with a family, it is a really, really good option. So this is kind of something that you would want to explore. We'll chat a bit more about that later on as well. If you are going to, explore the option of applying for a skilled visa or maybe even a partner visa, maybe your partner's Australian, we do recommend speaking to the migration agents at Visa Go Australia. They are lovely. They're super helpful. They will be able to help you navigate those more intense visa needs, and we'll be able to help you out with kind of the paperwork on the other side of things. Qualifications. So to be able to teach in Australia, you have to meet a specific requirement. So Australia is quite particular on what qualifications are required to teach there. You need to have a culmination of 4 years of education. So that could look like a 4-year Bachelor of Education. It could look like a 3-year Bachelor of Arts. With education and then a 1-year master's. It could look like a 3-year undergrad and a PGCE. There's a couple of varieties of how you can get there, a couple options of how you can get there, but you do have to have a culmination of 4 years experience. For those of you who hold a 3-year Bachelor of Arts with Education and don't have any extra qualifications, there might be some pathways that we can explore to get you to Australia. Every case is going to be individual. We're not going to be able to answer any kind of specific questions around qualifications at this point, just because everybody's case is individual and we need to speak to you specifically about your qualifications. You do need to have completed a minimum of 45 days of placement while completing your courses. You don't need to have your QTS or your early careers teaching programs done. You can go over to Australia as a new graduate, no experience, absolutely fine. One thing we do want to note, though, is that with PGCEs that were completed via a SCIT or Teach First program, it is a bit hit and miss sometimes as to whether or not the teaching registrations in Australia will accept those qualifications. So unfortunately, we don't have a say as to who is accepted or not. The teaching registration authorities are entirely separate. Unfortunately, we aren't directly affiliated with them. They have their own kind of sets of rules and regulations, and we kind of just operate with what they set. So sometimes it's a bit hard to tell if specific courses like SCITs and Teach First will be accepted, but we will speak to you individually about your circumstances and see if there's any way we can support. But we do encourage you to reach out to the registration board for the state that you are planning to make the move to if you have one of those qualifications and ask them about them specifically. You can send them, pictures of your qualifications and everything, and just ask them, would you potentially assess my qualifications positively, and hopefully they can get back to you on that. But yeah, we do suggest that you speak to them individually as well. Lovely. So what can you expect in each state? So we're going to start off with the state of Victoria, where you can find Melbourne. Melbourne is fantastic. I will rave about Melbourne, of course, because that's where I was, but it is a fantastic city. I absolutely adored my time there. I would go back if I could. So it's a really great place to be. There are lots of opportunities within Melbourne, and it's quite varied opportunities as well. So Melbourne is the only city where we do offer consistent teaching assistant work at this point. So you can work as a teaching assistant on a casual and contract basis. Quite often, like myself, you start on a supply basis and then you move into contracts as well if you find a school that's that you get on really well with. So there's lots of opportunities for teaching assistants. In terms of supply, contract, and ongoing work, we can support educators that are within early childhood. We can support primary and secondary teachers. We can also support SEN teachers. The opportunities available to you are going to depend on your visa, of course, because there are certain restrictions around each visa, which we will go through a little bit later on. But typically for our working holiday visa makers, we're going to suggest starting with supply work, with casual relief teaching, as they call it in Australia, and then moving into contract work. If you have something like a skills visa, then that would allow you to also work in like permanent opportunities, and we'll kind of explain why that is a little bit later on as well. We do also offer executive and leadership positions too. So if you are making the move full time, and that's going to be kind of your new home, and you're like a head teacher or like, part of administration, we can support you with that journey as well. In terms of registering for teaching within Victoria, you're going to need to apply to the VIT, the Victoria Institute of Teaching. With this registration, you can apply before you leave your country, your home country, which makes the transition into teaching a bit quicker when you do arrive in Australia. You do need to have your visa granted before you submit the application, and we recommend applying for the visa at the earliest 3 months before you arrive. So typically apply for that application between 2 to 3 months pre-arrival.
Small correction there. Apply for the VIT, not the visa.
Sorry.
You can get the visa earlier. Apply for the VIT 3 months prior to your arrival.
Sorry, too many V's going on tonight. Yes, visa you can apply for earlier. Sorry, it's the VIT. We recommend applying 2 to 3 months before you make a journey. Thanks for that, Corey. The VIT typically takes about 4 to 8 weeks to process, so you can still have that approved, before you arrive. And it costs about 170 Australian dollars. That includes what's called a Working with Children check, which is similar to like a DBS for our UK educators. And if you are working as a teaching assistant, though, you would not apply for the VIT. You would just need a Working with Children check, and that would cost you 128 Australian dollars. New South Wales. So New South Wales is very similar to Victoria. We unfortunately do not offer teaching assisting work in New South Wales, though we do have like out of school hour care for before and after school care programs. So there is some work with that. I know right now they have loads of interest in that. So that could potentially be an option for you, though if you are a teaching assistant, we would always recommend Victoria. In terms, again, of contract, casual, ongoing work, we can support our early childhood educators, primary teachers, secondary teachers, and SEN teachers. Again, dependent on your visa, but we can always work through the specifics with you when we speak to you. And we do also have executive and leadership positions, and there are some regional opportunities as well that we will touch on in a bit. To register as a teacher in New South Wales, you will apply to NESA, the New South Wales Educational Standard Authority. You must be in New South Wales or in Australia to submit your application. I think you need to be in New South Wales to start it, but you can submit it from anywhere in Australia. You have to do your Working with Children check prior to that application, which costs about $80, and then you apply for the NESA, which costs about $100. And NESA can take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to process. So be aware that once you arrive and you send in your application for a teaching registration, you will be waiting 4 to 8 weeks. So that might impact kind of when you arrive or what city you start with. You do need to have certified copies provided to NESA for the registration, and we will speak to you specifically about how to go about making sure your documents are certified correctly.
Awesome. So the other two main offices that we do have through ANZ UK are going to be Queensland and Western Australia. Similarly, we do have a new office coming up in South Australia in Adelaide there, and their opportunities are going to be quite similar to the ones in both Brisbane and Perth. So do keep that in mind. Our opportunities in both cities are very, very similar. Those are going to simply be on a contract or long-term basis. We unfortunately don't have any supply CRT casual teaching there at the time here. There are government-run pools that are available to sign up to, but unfortunately, we as an agency do not have access to that at the time. For those contracts, ongoing and permanent roles, those are going to be based in secondary opportunities and early childhood opportunities. Unfortunately, neither state has primary at the moment, but it is something that we are looking into. There are also some casual opportunities in Brisbane in the early childhood sector for early childhood educators as well. For Brisbane, the teaching registration there is going to be the QCTs, the Queensland College of Teachers. That one, again, you can register before you apply. It's strongly encouraged to do so as well. You do have to have your visa granted to submit that application, and it can take anywhere up to 3 to 4 months to process that application as well. So it's really good to make a head start on that one, get your documents in order, and make a jump as soon as you can. The application for the QCT also costs 290 Australian dollars. Similar to the Working with Children check, you will need a blue card for that as well. So it is a step-by-step process. We can definitely walk you through that one. Our team in Brisbane is very well versed in helping our international educators with that as well. For Perth, the similar process is going to be the TRBWA, and it's quite similar actually in terms of timeline and process as well. You can register before you arrive, and it is recommended to do so. However, the one difference is that you don't actually have to have your visa approved to submit that application. There have been educators in the past who have had their qualifications assessed prior to having their visa approved, so that is a possibility there. It does take the full 10 weeks to process for international educators. If you do have Australian qualifications, there is the possibility that it is a little bit quicker, but for international educators, it does tend to take the full 10 weeks to process. And that process is going to cost 140 Australian dollars. And as you've seen on probably all of the slides here, we do have those blogs that we keep up to date with our team in their local city and through our global team as well. All of them have information on all of these processes, on making the move to that specific city, and working through their registration processes.
Great, thank you, Corey. And all of these too will be shared with you when we do speak to you about your plans and your move. And we have loads of resources we share with you as well. So we can we'll chat this, later on about what we send you in terms of resources and everything too.
As Annika mentioned earlier there, we do also have some rural opportunities. I know that it can be a popular one, especially for, families who are making the move over, or anybody who wants to be based outside of the city. They want a slightly quieter area to be based in. These are great opportunities to, accelerate your teaching career. There's a possibility of moving through that process a bit quicker. It's a really great opportunity, especially if you are on a skilled worker visa or on a long-term permanent residency visa, because a lot of these opportunities are going to be on more of a permanent basis. Sometimes there is accommodation benefits as well. Not all the time. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but that is something to keep an eye on. And it can be really rewarding. I know some people, they want to be based in the cities and the hustle and bustle of it all, and there's some people who really want to explore more of that rural lifestyle in Australia, and it's quite a beautiful experience as well. So definitely worth exploring if you're interested.
That's great. Thanks, Corey. So we're going to touch briefly on teaching in New Zealand. Myself, Corey, and Kiara, we support mostly with the transition to Australia, but we do as a company support educators journeying to New Zealand. We have a colleague who's based in New Zealand that would support all inbound educators. It's a little bit of a different process that way, but we do have supply, like casual relief opportunities and contract opportunities throughout Auckland and Wellington for our early childhood, primary, secondary, special needs teachers as well. Secondary is a bit more limited. There's mostly contract opportunity within those cities. Supply is a bit of a different culture there. There's a bit of a different culture on supply work in New Zealand. So there is supply work going on, but there's quite a lot of contract opportunities there as well. In Christchurch, we do have opportunities for our early childhood educators. We don't yet support primary and secondary schools there, but yeah, if you're early childhood education looking to teach in the South Island, then Christchurch could work well for you. If you do make the journey to Australia as well, there are opportunities for relocation bonuses, so that might be a bit of a perk for you. You could always, spend some time in New Zealand and Australia. Something worth considering. It is a bit of a quieter lifestyle in New Zealand as well. Not quite so hustle and bustle as Australia, but you could always try out both countries. They are both lovely, and I don't think you would go wrong with either choice. I think this one's yours, Corey.
Sorry, doesn't look like that. Oh, there we go. So work options here. I know that Annika and myself both briefly touched on each one of these earlier, and every state does have their own opportunities in terms of which ones are available there. So a very, very common one for traveling educators to start off on is going to be CRT, that's casual relief teaching or day-to-day supply work. This is a really great way to start out when you do first get there. It's a really good chance to try out different school settings, see which ones you really connect with, and it does lead to further opportunities for longer term placements and block bookings as well. It's a really great way to network, build up those relationships, and can lead to a lot of great opportunities in the future for you. There is the possibility of moving into contracts as well that are going to be set amount of time through either ourselves or through the school specifically as well. There are also long and short-term contracts available in most of the cities as well. These are great for traveling educators who are maybe only going to be in Australia for a year or two, and they have, specific qualifications that are a little bit more common for those contract opportunities as well, especially in the secondary area, but available across the board really. Those ones are going to be, on a term-by-term basis. They can be anywhere from 6 weeks long to 6 months long as well, and they can expand from there. And then we do have permanent contracts as well. And this is going to mostly be for anybody who's on a skills visa or a partner visa, anything that leads to permanent residency that way, because these are going to be our ongoing roles. These are anything where the school wants a year-long booking at least, or somebody who can stay for even longer than that, 2 or 3 years. So it's a really great way to really get involved in the community, find your home base in that city, and progress from there. For those permanent opportunities, I will also mention that is going to be paid to scale. Your experience that you are bringing over from your home country will support you in your pay rates that you receive in Australia.
That's great. Thank you, Corey.
Oh, this one's mine as well, actually. Sorry. When's best to arrive? A really common question that we get, and a very good question as well. So in Australia, the term dates are going to be kind of spread out. There's really no bad time to arrive, to be completely honest. There are 4 different terms in the Australia school year. Every one of those is going to be anywhere between 8 to 10 weeks long, with a 2-week term break between each of them. Our busiest time for casual relief teaching is going to be terms 2 and 3, but obviously a lot of educators like to make that move over in the August-September time at the end of the school year in the UK and Ireland, and it's a popular time. Our team is well prepared for that big influx. It's also a great time if you are thinking about looking into those contract opportunities for the start of the school year in January, because a lot of schools do begin to look for those opportunities, those contracts, and they start to interview in the October, November time as well. So it's really great to be on the ground, meeting those teams, getting to do a couple trial days as a supply educator and progress from there. January is also a very popular arrival time, but it is noteworthy that the first couple of weeks of the school year tend to be a little bit slower, especially on the casual relief side of things and some of those shorter term contracts. That's just because the schools are finding out where all those gaps are in their system there, and it does pick up by the beginning of that term 2 time.
That's great. Thanks, Corey. I think a good way to look at it as well is February in Australia is like September here in the UK and Ireland and Europe. So those of you who are experienced, you'll know that in September time, yeah, it's a bit more quiet. People are settling in. It takes a couple of weeks for the bug to kick in, and if everybody gets sick. So the first couple of weeks of term are always a bit quiet. But like Corey mentioned, from week 3, 4, it does pick up, and then term 2 and 3 is all full steam ahead. So that's kind of what you can expect work-wise in terms of arrivals. So now we'll chat a bit about the visa requirements. And so this will kind of explain a lot as well as to why working holiday makers are a bit restricted on what particular opportunities they can take advantage of. So 417 working holiday visa. This visa is fantastic because it is really relatively the cheapest option to get to Australia. The application is very easy and very straightforward, and most applications are approved within about 10 minutes to a couple of hours. Some educators are requested to complete a medical. You will definitely be requested to complete one if you do work in early childhood, but if you are requested, it's no stress. You just need to go to a clinic to have that done, and then it takes a couple of weeks to approve from there, but it doesn't take very long at all. So this visa is has a very high turnover in terms of approval. When the visa is approved, you have 12 months to enter Australia, and then once you enter Australia, that is when your first 12 that's when your first 12 months of living there starts. After that, if you are if you hold like an Irish passport or the European passports listed over here under the purple section, then you will need to complete regional work to extend the visa, from 1 year to 2. If you are from the UK and you hold a UK passport, you will not need to complete the regional work to extend the visa. That is a very nice new agreement that has come up between Australia and the UK, but all the other countries will still need to complete the regional work to extend that beyond 1 year. We do recommend applying for the visa about 6 months before you enter Australia, just because that gives you time to prepare for your arrival, but then it also gives you some wiggle room. God forbid you had to postpone your trip for any reason. You wouldn't be caught up going, oh my gosh, I'm at the end of my 12 months to enter, and you'd be a bit stressed. So 6 months before your arrival works really well. You can work in any industry, and you can also leave Australia and come back as much as you want. So if you wanted to go to New Zealand for a couple months to travel, or you wanted to go to Southeast Asia for a 2-week trip, you can do that. There's no limit to how many times you can enter the country. There is a restriction, however, that you are not able to work for one employer for longer than 6 months. So excluding ourselves, because technically we contract you out to schools, so you can work with us the entire time you were there. But what that means specifically is that you aren't able to work longer than 6 months for one particular school while you were on the 417 working holiday visa. So this is why the permanent opportunities don't necessarily work well with the working holiday visa, but you can definitely take advantage of the supply work, the casual relief teaching, and those short to long-term contracts, again, 6 weeks to 6 months. You can time it out really well too. Sometimes when educators arrive, for a term 1 start, they might supply for a couple of terms and then get to know some schools that might request them back for a contract until the end of the year, which works out to be 6 months. So things can work out really nicely time-wise. We don't see that the working holiday visa hinders our educators in any way. We just really suggest starting with supply work if that's available in where you're headed, and then moving into contracts that way. So what does it cost? Now, the visa has recently, the working holiday visa has recently been updated, and the cost has risen just a little bit over the last year. So now it is 635 Australian dollars for that. So it works out to roughly, I think, £330 for those of you living in the UK. So it's not incredibly expensive, which is quite handy because you can, you don't have to worry about saving up loads and loads and loads before you apply to that. They do need to see, though, that you have savings equivalent to 5,000 Australian dollars. That's just proved by a bank statement, everything that you prove during the time of your application submission. You don't need to prove that when you enter the country or anything. The countries listed under health insurance here under this little blue tab, they are the countries that have access to reciprocal healthcare. So this means that you can access Medicare for free in Australia. That is done, I believe, when you arrive. You make an application to Medicare, and then that will cover your doctor visits and things like that. Now, we do really recommend traveling with insurance, especially even just on the way to Australia. But if you're going to be doing little trips where you're traveling up the East Coast for 6 weeks, and you might be doing some skydiving or bungee jumping, please get travel insurance. We really highly recommend it. Insure any valuable belongings as well. I used to travel with my violin, and it is like my baby, so I always had that insured as well. Things like cameras, if you're photographers, have that insured too. So just little things to think about. But otherwise, if you're from those countries listed there, you don't need health insurance during your entire stay. I'll touch briefly on the 462 working holiday visa. So this is like the sister to the 417. It's just for other countries that are listed there on the right-hand side. So basically, it's the same process as the 417 working holiday visa. It is the same cost as well. Same thing where, once it's approved, you have 12 months to enter the country. You can leave and enter as much as you'd like. You do need to complete regional work to extend the visa. So it's very similar. It's just different paperwork. You do also need to meet some education requirements, and you can find those listed on the government website as well. Again, if you are looking to apply for maybe a partner visa or a skills visa, or something that is a little bit more intensive an application than a 417 or 462 working holiday, we really recommend speaking to Visa Go Australia. We unfortunately are not able to give visa advice around the application for visas such as a skilled visa, so please do speak to Visa Go. You can mention that you watched a webinar or spoken to us, and they will know who we are, and they're fantastic and will really be able to help you out with that. The New Zealand working holiday visa is similar to Australia, though there are some kind of key differences. With Australia, if you're on a UK passport and you have access to 3 years on the working holiday visa, you can kind of break up those 3 years. So if you wanted to use 1 year, travel a bit, go home for a bit, come back and use the 2 years, you could do that. With New Zealand, they will grant anybody on a UK or Canadian passport 3 years initially, though you have to use those 3 years in one stint. If you don't use them all up in that one go, you will lose them. So please be aware of that if you're going to apply to New Zealand. Again, you can, when you apply for the visa, you have 12 months to enter the country after it is approved. I believe some countries need to meet certain requirements to extend the visa, though we recommend looking into your specific requirements if you are making the journey, and the team in New Zealand can give you more information on what will be involved in that process as well for you. The application does take a little bit longer to process. It can take upward of a month to process, so just keep that in mind when making your journey. Now, cost of living in Australia. This is a big question that we get quite a lot as well. Is Australia expensive? How much will I earn? You know, what can I expect to pay? Yes, Australia is a little bit expensive in terms of cost of living, though I would say everywhere is kind of expensive at the moment with cost of living and everything. But you do see that the prices of certain things are higher within Australia, but the teaching wages do reflect that. So the teaching wages in Australia are actually quite high. They're very good, and you are paid to scale. So we take into account your qualifications and your experience, and we will pay you to scale based around that. Unfortunately, our global team based here in the UK can't give you specific numbers when we speak to you on the phone, but when we do put you in touch with the teams in Australia, they will be able to give you numbers around what you can expect in terms of salary and hourly pay and everything. But just to give you a bit of an idea of what you might be able, like what to expect in terms of what things will cost. Rent, depending on where you are based, in what city you're based in what part of the city you're based in, could be anywhere from 250 to 600 Australian dollars per week. That converts to about 140 to 330 pounds a week, or 156 to 375 euros per week. And then standard costs for, you know, going out, 5 to 12 Australian dollars for a pint of beer, which works out to be about £2 to £6 or €3 to €6. So it does depend, it does differ. Some places will be a bit more, will have different prices, depends on where you're traveling and if it's a bit more touristy. But everything is kind of all related, I suppose. So even though things do cost a bit more in Australia, your wage will reflect that, and the teaching wages are quite good there.
I mean, we had a colleague as well who was living in London. He made the move over to Sydney, and I think he really put it best that as much as everything seems a lot more expensive, as much as those numbers are definitely higher, you're making enough money that, you know, he actually had more spending money than he ever had here in the UK. So it's all about realizing that, you know, the dollar is a little bit different than the pound, the euro, and so keeping that in mind as well when you're making that transition. In terms of pay rates, as Annika mentioned there, it is going to be on an individual basis. It will be based off of your years of experience that you have behind you, your qualifications, so it does vary a little bit. These are some of the ranges that you can expect depending on where you are from and what your role is. For TAs, for teaching assistants there, it is paid on a hourly basis, whereas if you are on a supply teaching contract there, it would be on a daily basis, and that is going to be paid, again, as Annika mentioned, on a weekly basis. So they are competitive, and ANZ UK, we don't take any money from you. We are completely free for our educators to use, which is great to keep in mind when you're making this transition as well. Similarly, for New Zealand, the pay rates there are going to fluctuate a little bit based off of your role and the years of experience that you do have there as well. So again, this is something where we can discuss those ranges with you in our individual call that we have. However, you won't have an exact number until you do speak with your consultant in Australia or New Zealand.
That's great. Thanks, Corey. So a little bit of tips on finding somewhere to live. So this is one of the most popular questions that we receive, actually, more so I would say even than, you know, like, will my qualifications be accepted? People they ask us a lot, you know, how do I find a place to stay? You know, I'm moving to a new country. What is that process like? So we definitely recommend staying somewhere like a hostel or an Airbnb for at least a couple of weeks when you first arrive. It helps you get over the jet lag. It helps you to kind of just, you know, see the city as well. It kind of makes you feel like you're on holiday a bit. So you're going to go out and like actually, you know, do fun things, see the city. So definitely start by staying in a hostel or Airbnb, whatever your preference is. We all recommend share housing. I can speak from personal experience. When I first moved to Australia, I only intended to be there for a couple of months. So I was in a studio flat. I then extended my stay to a whole year. And I knew after my kind of initial stay, I was like, I need to find a house share because I was not going out. I wasn't doing anything, wasn't seeing people. And I had so much more fun after I lived in a house share. I'm still very good friends with some of the people that I've lived with as well. And it definitely made all the difference to my experience for sure. It also helps you save some money. It makes things much cheaper when you're splitting the bills and utilities and everything. Some rooms will be furnished, some flats will be furnished, some will not be. It is quite easy though to find furniture in good condition either on Facebook Marketplace or you can buy it at IKEA. Quite affordable. It's super easy to furnish rooms there and everything. We recommend, getting onto Facebook and having chats with educators and people that are living there. You will oftentimes find people advertising, oh, hey, you know what? I'm going back home for 3 months. Does somebody want to sublet my room? Or people, moving on from their journey, going somewhere else, advertising their room. Flatmates.com, Flatmates Finders and like realestate.com are really good websites to use as well when looking for places to stay. So these resources as well will be shared in our info pack with you after we have spoken to you directly. So you're going to have these resources at your fingertips to help you with that transition. So you kind of have a place to start as well. We're also going to provide you with our area guides. So each city has its own kind of little area guide and map going on that will tell you what areas are going to maybe cost a bit more, what have better access to transit, what places are maybe a bit more trendy, what places are quieter, things like that. With Sydney as well, we do also have an interactive kind of like Google map, which is super fun. I absolutely love it. It's color coded. It looks great. I think it's one of the best resources we have. It will tell you as well, especially what areas of the city are going to be more expensive, what areas of the city are harder to transit from. Certain parts of Sydney don't have the best access to transit. So if you wanted supply work, you're looking at traveling upwards of an hour and a half more each way. So you need to be aware of that. So we really recommend you look at that resource if you're going to go to Sydney when we share that with you. So just be aware of that. We do recommend doing some research before you make the journey though, so you know what your budget is going to be. Make a list of what's going to be important for you. You may have to compromise on a couple things, but just, have a list of what you know is going to be a non-negotiable. Give yourself, up to 4 weeks to find a place to stay in Australia. I know it's kind of difficult to find places to stay anywhere right now. I've had some friends move to Bristol as well recently who took like a month to find places to stay. So it's kind of just what's happening all over the place. And then be flexible. Again, compromising with some of your wish lists as well, but you will find places to stay. There are lovely places, and just be open to where you're based in the city because there's lots of great places that you can live. In terms of getting around, public transport, I would say, is going to be the best way to get around in Australia, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. If you're based in Perth and Brisbane, I'd say you're going to likely need a car. If you also want to be based in the region, so maybe if you want to be based more rural Melbourne, for example, and commute out to the regions, work out in some of the schools that are a little bit quieter in the country there, you would want a car. But if you're going to be based quite centrally in Melbourne and Sydney, then you can really easily get around via public transit and like trains and trams and everything. Each city will have their own kind of like travel card as well, so you can use that to really quickly tap on and off of those different transit modes and everything. Cycling is a big thing in Australia as well, particularly in Melbourne. There's loads of like cycle paths and everything, and there's lovely bike paths along like the river too. My husband and I met in Melbourne, and he absolutely loved cycling there. He talks about it all the time. He misses cycling in Melbourne so much. So it's a great place to really, invest in that kind of eco-friendly transit option if you're keen to get into that. And then it is, quite easy to walk around. With cities, you might be going from one suburb to the other, so you definitely wouldn't want to walk as kind of your go-to mode as transportation. But yeah, very easy to get around by public transport if you prefer that to driving. But just, keep in mind your specific scenario and what you're going to be looking for.
So when you join ANZ UK, you are not just signing up for employment, and you're joining a whole community of traveling educators. A lot of ourselves within the team have done the move as well. We know the drill, we know what you're going through. And we also really want to put you in touch with other educators who are making this move. I know a lot of people, if they're doing it on their own, it can feel a little bit lonely. It can feel a little scary when you're doing this big journey. So this is a really great chance to meet other people. We have pre-departure events here in the UK and Ireland, so that you can meet people before you make the move over. Sometimes you can even find, your future housemates as well, people to explore the city with. We do have a Facebook group. That's our Educators Moving to Australia Facebook group, which we will, invite you to join once you have had a chat with ourselves. And it's a great way to ask questions, see who's making the move at the same time as you, get advice from people, hear their personal stories, and see what works best for them. And then once you do arrive, there's welcome events. I think we have just had a boat party in Melbourne, or it's this weekend or something like that. Yeah. Which is so cool. So we've got a bunch of educators who are going to meet each other, go see the Melbourne City Centre there along the Yarra River, and have a really great time. It's a good way to socialize, great way to meet people when you first get there from all over the world, not just from the UK and Ireland and Europe. And yeah, we want to connect you. Let's get you in touch with other people making the trip too.
Yeah, you never know. You might be, like Corey said, with your housemates, or with with your new best friend. You never know what'll happen.
Exactly. And a really good question as well. I think we talked about this a bit earlier, but why ANZ UK? Like I had mentioned there previously, a lot of us have done this before. A lot of us are, previous educators. We have been traveling educators. So a lot of this comes from personal experience. There's been a lot of research put into this. We have a lot of resources available to make this as simple and clearly laid out process for you as possible. We've got a lot of connections to the other educators through those Facebook groups, the community. We've got 360 support. That's why we're based here in the UK, is to make it so that you can give us a call during normal hours. You don't have to be way early or way late to speak with us. And we help you through that transition from here to on the plane to when you arrive, and coming back again. So definitely that whole 360 experience there. And yeah, we're excited for you. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Corey. So a couple FAQs that we have. We did see that some of you submitted some questions when you registered, and so this is kind of what we were seeing come up quite a bit. How different is the curriculum between the UK and Ireland and Europe to Australia? It is not incredibly different. It's really easy to kind of fit yourself into the school system there and everything. The curriculum is not going to be like too dauntingly different. Biggest thing though is going to be the history. I think on our last page we did mention that we have our LMS system. That's our learning management system. And that has little courses for you to do before you make the journey and everything. And some of those things touch on things like the history of Australia, and that is very important, especially the Aboriginal history. So we would recommend doing your research into that, listening to podcasts. There's podcasts about the stolen generation as well. That is huge. That'll be really helpful. But biggest thing is going to be the history. what if I have a 3-year degree? We can speak about this with you specifically if you do have a 3-year degree. There are some loopholes that you could take, but you just need to be aware it's going to be a lot more paperwork. It might be cost a little extra then because there's going to be some more paperwork, but we can always have that chat with you to help you kind of make the decision if that is going to be the best fit for you. What degree do I need to teach? Early childhood in Australia. We saw this one come up. Early childhood qualifications can vary quite a bit in Australia. There are so many different levels that we can support educators at. So there's level 3 educators, diploma educators, early childhood teachers. It really depends on the qualification you have, but if you have any kind of formal early childhood qualification, it's a really good chance that you will be able to work in those settings in some capacity. So we'll need to speak to you directly about what's going to be involved in your process, because it's going to be a bit different from the teachers and everything as well. So we will help you run through that and help you wrap your head around what's going to be involved in your process and what your steps are going to look like. And then what are the school hours like? They're quite similar, really, to what we see in the UK and Australia. The day typically starts around 8:30 to 9 and it finishes about 3 to 3:30. If you're working supply, you're going to rock up, half an hour before the day starts. So if the students arrive at 9, you want to be there definitely by 8:30. If the day ends at 3 o'clock, just make sure that all the students have left, make sure that any work you've done is marked, make sure the classroom is tidy, and you can be on your way by 3:30. So it's quite nice if you're doing supply. It's quite casual, but typically, the day is pretty similar to what we see in the UK. They are a bit more relaxed as well in Australia, so you're not going to be there. I know quite a few teachers here in the UK who are at school at 7 in the morning until 7 p.m. That is not typically how they operate in Australia. You won't be doing 12-hour days like that, so it's going to be a lot more relaxed as well, which is quite nice.
We did recently host as well a substitute teaching in Australia webinar similar to this that went into more of the nitty-gritty of getting the booking, getting into the school and checking out at the end of the day. So we answered a lot of questions in that, and if you are interested in seeing the recording for that webinar, please let us know and we can send that to you as well. But yeah, the other good thing about doing supply, especially for a traveling educator, you've got the flexibility with the hours. You're not going to be expected to do any of those, after school meetings, anything like that. And you've also got the flexibility of, booking off days throughout the term. You don't have to work Monday to Friday every single week. You've got a lot of control over your schedule that way, which means that you get to see more of the country while you're there.
Lovely. So we'll take a couple of minutes really quickly, but to answer some questions that you might have. We're conscious of the time, so we don't want to take up too much more of your evening, but if you do have any questions, pop them into the chat. In the meantime, these are some of our contact details. You will be receiving an email hopefully tomorrow following up from this session, and we will email you the recording as well. So you will hear from us, and then in that email too will be links to book in calls with us directly, so you can book in the consultant that is best placed to support you. But those are our contact details as well. Have we had any questions come through, Corey?
Yeah, we just had a really great one come through actually. With casual teaching, are you expected to teach a specific subject? This especially applies for educators who specifically teach Irish language, and I've had that one come up a lot. With casual leave teaching, there is the flexibility of doing general cover. You will often be left cover resources for that day in which you don't have to prep the lesson. It's already done for you. You are often paired into kind of subjects that are a little bit more related to your subject. So, if you don't want to be teaching subjects in math, like maths and science, don't stress too much. There's also the possibility of doing humanities related subjects, history, geography, anything like that as well. If you do have a specific subject that you teach, we can find roles that are going to be specific to that as well, but there is a lot of flexibility within that too. Right, we got a lot of questions coming through here. I've had a few people ask about the WWCC for Sydney. So again, with the Working with Children check, for New South Wales, that is the only state in which you do physically have to be within the state to apply to their teaching registration. And the reason for that is that you have to be in person to apply for the Working with Children check. Once that is completed, the NESA part of the application will be completely online. So you can actually start to get those documents ready, uploaded, and good to go. So that once you have your physical Working with Children check completed, you're ready and off to go. Find a few more here. Visas for long-term contracts. That's a really great question there. Annika, do you want to take that one?
Yes, so long-term contracts. If you are, really wanting to go to Australia to spend a good few years there, be in like one or two schools for the remainder of your stay, we would really encourage you to do some research into the skills visas. So in particular, the 189 and 190 skills visas. Again, please reach out to Visa Go Australia because they are very, very knowledgeable about everything involved with those processes. And they will really be able to help you navigate that the whole application and everything. So I'd say that's going to be your probably your best option. Also, if you're planning to move with a family as well, and you really want to go in and have a job lined up before you arrive, skills visa is the way to go because you can have your permanent residency there, bring your family over, and oftentimes with the skills visa, there is flexibility to interview before you make the journey to Australia. So that could be a really good fit for you. So again, please speak to Visa Go Australia because they will absolutely help you out.
Related to that as well, a few people have been asking about securing work before they arrive. This is, as well is going to pertain to the type of visa that you're going to be on. So essentially, when you are registering with us, you're getting set up so that you are prepared to start working straight away when you get there or as soon as your registration is completed. However, if you are going to be on one of those shorter term visas, there isn't too much of a likelihood of having a contract set up prior to your arrival. If you are on more of like a skills visa, a permanent residency visa, anything like that, there is a lot more flexibility in setting up those long-term contracts prior to your arrival. But it is going to depend on your situation as well, your qualifications, timeline. It all factors into it. So it's a really great question to ask your consultant when you do have your one-to-one chat.
Great. Should we just do one more question, Corey?
Sure, yeah. Dig through here. We've got lots of great questions. And just as a reminder as well, like, that's why we're here in the UK. Your global team is here to support you. So definitely register to have a chat with one of us. We can go all of these details. You don't even have to have your timeline necessarily all worked out. You don't have to have all your plans set and ready to go. You can have that conversation in order to help you figure these things out as well. So definitely recommend doing that. There are some great questions around the 6-month limitation with the working holiday visa. So I know there's somebody else mentioned this as well. Annika had mentioned it quite briefly there. In New Zealand, if you are going to be on that visa, you do have to be there continuously for the 3 years. You can leave earlier, but that time is going to lapse whether or not you're there or not. So once you've got that visa applied to, then the time is ticking essentially at that one. With the working holiday visa for Australia, however, you do have the option of renewing that annually. So you can go for 1 year, leave the country, and then apply for that second year later on as well.
On the UK
so there's
visa
a bit
or passport.
on the UK visa. I will put that one on the UK passport. For anybody else who has to complete the regional work for that one though, the 88 days of regional work have to be completed within that first year, and then you can have access to that second year. And when it comes to working as an educator within that 6-month limit, our team is well versed in supporting educators on that working holiday visa. we have options of doing supply. There's the different length contracts. So there is a lot of flexibility within that. It's not just that, you're going to be in one school for 6 months and then it's going to be a big waiting game until we find the next contract. We have ways of keeping you working throughout your entire time in Australia.
That's lovely. Thank you for that, Corey. We're sorry that we can't get to everybody's questions, but please keep note of everything that you want to ask us. And then when you do have a chance to speak to us directly, we will be more than happy to support you with those questions and kind of help you with your own individual circumstances, because no two circumstances are the same, no two educators are the same, and everybody's scenarios are going to be different, so we will help you out the best way that we can support you individually. Good question, Sean. We're going to send you links to be able to book in calls with us shortly, so hopefully tomorrow we'll have the recording of the webinar sent through to you with the links to book in calls with us, so you will receive that. So keep an eye on your junk inbox just in case it doesn't come through, and if you don't see it or anything at all, please find our website and inquire with us that way, and we can help you out. But in closing, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your Thursday evening. We know that this time of year is very, very busy, so we really, really appreciate you being here with us, and we hope you found the session informative. My last piece of advice is do it. Go for it. Grab the bull by the horns and make the jump. It is worth it. You never know what'll happen, and it's fantastic. The skills you learn, the lessons you learn while you're traveling and teaching, so you won't regret
it. And we're looking forward to hearing your stories and supporting you on this amazing journey.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Have a lovely evening, and we will speak to you all soon.